5 p.m. in time for the regular scheduled June 25th, 2024 meeting of Niagara Parish School Board. This is an unscheduled meeting, a special call meeting to deal with some unfinished business. Board members and visitors, would you please silence your cell phones and all electronic devices as not to interrupt the meeting? And Ms. Weaver, will you do the invocation for us?
Yes, absolutely.
And Ms. Dalton, will you do the pledge? Thank you.
So bow your heads with me. Heavenly Father, we come to you this evening and we thank you for the very humble heart that we're able to have a great institution to lead and to make policies for. We ask that you bless our meeting. We ask that you show us your wisdom in all the decisions that we make. In Jesus' name, amen.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before you sit, board members and visitors, I'd like to take a moment of silence to recognize Mr. Richard Foshee, who was the business manager here for the parish, for Niagara Parish School Board for several years. Mr. Foshee recently passed away, so if you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Disconnected.
Mr. Danzig.
Here.
Mr. McGuire. Mr. Benefield.
Here.
Mr. Harris.
President.
Mrs. McGaskey. Present. Ms. Palmer. Ms. Phelps.
Here.
Ms. Harvey. Here. Mr. Pradu.
Here.
Mr. Nicholson. And Ms. Page. Here. We have a
Okay, superintendent report, he has nothing listed, but can you give us an update on summer school?
Summer school is wrapping up. It's been very successful, and I think the students have benefited from it because many of them had to either make up attendance issues, academic issues, EOC issues. So very exciting stuff. The one thing I'd say is just, and I think I reminded y'all of this last time, realize that in years coming, we will not be doing ESSER summer school. So summer school in years following will be a much more pared down version of what it currently is. And we'll be trying to address student needs throughout the year in order to make sure that those numbers are smaller as well.
So summer school will not be a big event like it has been the next couple of years.
Unless we have another pandemic.
Let's not do that.
No.
One more thing in the superintendent report. You had mentioned about some of the teachers back in January, some of the teachers that had expressed, when you did the climate survey, and had expressed some of the good things and some of the employees in the system. Have you heard any follow-up on that?
So what we're looking at moving forward is we're actually trying to determine what that was a grant through LDOE. They provided us this pretty expensive service at no cost through a grant, and we're looking at there's some schools that they've never been an issue on these surveys, and there's some schools that they're persistent, and so we're looking at pricing moving forward of being able to still monitor that. We also possibly want to expand into seeing how our principals feel about central office, to see if there's, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we're telling principals to respond to teacher needs, then we need to be doing the same thing for them. So we're in talks right now of how that will look in coming years. But overall, positive stuff. It's mostly quantitative. It's just them answering questions. So we don't have a whole lot of qualitative piece after the fact to explain why they thought things were great, or to explain in more detail why things weren't so great. But we'll be following up on those schools that had the most concerns with more of a qualitative piece, some interviews and things like that.
Thank you. On the old business in July, can we have an update on the tattletale for the buses?
Yes, and Mr. Kozad's in the midst of that, and we have to have an update for you because summer's going pretty fast.
It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, new business. First item, and we don't have it broken out by department. 3A, discuss and consider revisions to the Niagara Parish School Board Student Handbook, policy section electronic telecommunication devices for students. Cell phone discipline policy.
So, actually, and I apologize, I think
We need a motion and a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
style way, he's having to qualify something.
No, you're right. She's right, and I was wrong because I don't have to qualify.
Okay, we have an offer by by Reverend Harris,
Second.
second by Ms. Phelps.
Okay, so I don't have to qualify anymore, but what I was going to say is, I think we're on that path. We have to adopt the cell phone policy first.
Before the handbook.
Then the handbook will collectively, we did not make any changes to the handbook we did, never mind, I stand corrected. But we made significant changes based on everything y'all said on the cell phone policy. I think some of the major issues we corrected were students having their phones confiscated overnight or over weekends. Also, I'm good, thank you. Also, the fact that the first offense needed to be a warning, although we actually updated that even more so at the advice of Ms. Page, that warning needed to be something that there's a paper trail on.
That's right.
So if you notice on that first offense, and it's identical for junior high and high school, it is a verbal warning. But say Mr. Waskin's a student and I give him the verbal warning, I will still take his phone, turn it into the office, no punitive punishment, nothing like, a suspension or ISS. I take it, turn it in the office, the student can get that one back at the end of the day. And what that does for us is it's a pretty legitimate warning. They're going to remember that warning. But at the same time, it allows us to have a bit of a paper trail to be able to track that stuff, that it actually did occur.
Do they
Instead of
sign
just,
for the phone or something like that?
say it again?
Do they sign for the phone or something like that?
Yeah, so anytime, it's not necessarily like a receipt, but like, hey, we have your phone, and there's going to be a signature of you got it back, so no one thinks that, we don't want a student getting their phone back and then saying, I never got it back. Not that any of our students would do that.
Okay. Board members, we've all had a chance to view the policy that was sent out yesterday.
Oh, and Mr. Benfield, one other thing. If you notice, if you read through the entire policy, you're like, they're still taking photos. But if you get to the end, it says if a parent chooses, so we're still going to allow schools to pick up phones. Lee's on his second offense, so 5 days we're going to pick it up. But if the parent chooses that they want it back, then they can come pick it up. Also, there's a lot of discussion about the timeline. We felt like every school's different, so we did not want to, and there's a lot of discussion, 3 o'clock is too late, or 30 minutes is too short. We will look at every school, but we wanted to give them the flexibility and autonomy to choose what was best for them instead of saying everyone's like Natchez Central and all that type of stuff.
So, you said they can pick it up if they don't want that same timeline, so theoretically, second offense, 5 days, we keep it for 5 days.
Mhm.
But if the parent wants it back on, they come get it on Tuesday.
That day.
If on Wednesday, they're called with it again, that's third offense.
Yes, sir.
And then fourth offense, it could all happen in a week.
It could,
Okay.
and that's why I would encourage parents to let the student feel a little bit of pain
Right.
so that they don't, but you're right, that could definitely happen.
But the language in it says if the parents insist on picking up the phone prior to the timelines, it can be picked up
Yeah.
during that school's designated time frame. So there's some lineage there that you can go either way.
And what we tried to do, the committee, and I think Ms. Phelps, and I don't want to speak for her, but tell me if I'm wrong, we tried to really make this, to listen to the community and make this as community friendly as possible while also not being revolutionary in what we're doing in the schools. So that way, kind of split the baby a little bit to where we felt both parties should feel happy with this. The community, this is a massive reverse for us. We're not taking phones over weekends and all that, but at the same time, principals, we understand you have a job to do. We want to do this in a way that doesn't completely blow things up. So I think we did a good job of it.
I think you did a good job. Oh, please.
There was a lot of information went into that funnel to get to this point.
Especially with a California district that just said there ain't no phone gonna be.
Well, and I will say this, there is legislation that supports this because the legislation passed and was signed by the governor. Cell phones are not allowed on campuses. What we're talking about though, we already have that policy. We're talking about what do we do when they inevitably take it to schools.
Jennifer, you got something?
Not for cell phone.
Okay. All right, board members, any further discussion? Ms. Robbins, can you do a roll call vote on this item? So a yes means we're taking this, we are approving this policy, and no means you are voting against the policy.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Benfield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. Nagaski?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Frater?
Yes.
And Ms. Page? Yes. Motion passed.
Okay, and just so you're aware, we will be doing a deep dive with principals at the principal meeting about what this looks like, the impact is, et cetera, so.
Okay, item 3B, discuss and consider approving the 24-25 Fair School Board Student Handbook. And I need a motion.
All of them.
Second by Ms. Page, second by Mr. Danzy, and Ms. Ingram.
Because of Louisiana legislation that just happened, there is something, and it hasn't been changed on it, because I did not upload a new one. If you will go to page 14, Mr. Roscoe.
As Mr. Wassman's doing that, I do want to inform the board in the viewing audience, I know we're must-see TV, there has been a rash of these legislation signed just in the past days and week. So a lot of the cleanup you're seeing is us trying to chase the tail of the governor. And so we'd love to have gotten this sooner, but there's no way to do
I
so.
probably did not get it all.
Yeah.
Go down a little bit more to expulsion removal, mandatory expulsion removal. So if you will look at the second bullet, any student 16 years of age, they have now changed that. So for Act 337, it is now any student grades 6 through 12 found guilty of possession of, grades 6 through 12 who is found guilty of being in possession of a firearm, a knife with a blade equal to or in excess of 2 1/2 inches in length, or any illegal narcotic drug or other controlled substance, shall be expelled from school for a minimum of 4 complete school semesters and shall be referred to the district attorney for appropriate action. So we have that it will be 16 and older would get 4 complete semesters, and then if you're under 16, you would get 2 complete semesters. Well, we will be taking that out. So it's now grades 6 through 12. It doesn't have an age. You're right. So I will need to change that. Actually, I will just be taking out that third bullet and putting 6 through 12. And then they also took out, that's all.
Mr. Hagan, do we need to amend the motion to be vote on this with Ms. Ingram's amended portions, or are we good?
I think if we, what Ms. Kanika finalizes is fine. If we're supporting what Ms. Ingram's saying, I think we can leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
And then it will change again on page 21 under,
Can't help this because it's coming out every day.
Right.
under the vaping policy. They actually wrote, they have an actual, they passed an act on vaping to include marijuana or THC in the vapes. But it's under C, where again it says students under age 16 will be assigned 2 semesters. We're going to have to change that to grades 6 through 12 as well. So instead of 1 and 2, it will say grades 6 through 12. We'll receive 4 complete semesters.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah. And then we'll know that if it's grade 5 and under, then it's going to have to be at the discretion of the superintendent and the student services department. Is basically what they're leaving it up to. So we'll take out number 2 and we'll just change from age 16 to grade 6 through
So it's the 4 semesters if THC is detected in the
12. Correct. Yeah. And that is all the changes that I 4C right now.
And if, as long as we vote tonight, we can make it to the printers, correct?
Yes, I will be doing it as soon as we leave here and all day tomorrow.
You had mentioned about an appendix.
I did. I have received every person's handbook, and none of them include fees.
So we
So,
don't want one either. There we go.
so I'm going, if it's okay, I'm just gonna remove that sentence about an appendix.
Just make sure that this committee gets that.
Yeah. So, and that's, so we'll be, and then I'll clean up the table of contents, and I included your drug policy as well in there. So I dropped it in.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Page, a second by Mr. Ramsey. Any further discussion on this item with the edits that Ms. Ingram has provided, which are state mandatory? And vote yes is to adopt this handbook and go to the printer. Vote no is to not approve the handbook. Ms. Rose, can you do a roll call vote?
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Benfield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey? Yes. Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Frager?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Motion on 3C to approve supplemental salary schedule in accordance with Act 311 of the legislature. Need a motion, please?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Danzy, a second by Pastor
Okay, so on this one, all we did, if you look at the very top, this is not your salary schedule, but if you look at those top 3 paragraphs under supplemental salary schedule language, that is the verbiage that came from Hammond, Sills, and Geis of how to address this. And what Mr. Wasson has done is he's placed that verbiage into the overall salary schedule, which is coming up in a different, you'll be voting on the salary schedule edition as well. But I don't think it needs, I need to read it for you. It's basically saying if they do anything outside of their job description, they get paid. And even more specifically, we're going to be having a very robust conversation with principals, because if they mess with their 45-minute uninterrupted planning time. Now, just a caveat, if the principal or a master teacher is planning with the teacher, that's not interrupted, that's support. But if they tell them to go cover another class and watch another teacher's class because they're absent, then we would be liable to have to pay those teachers. And we obviously, we don't want to do that because we don't want to take away people's planning, but we also don't want to be paying a lot of money outside of general that we're not used to. So this language addresses that and puts Act 311 into action.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Roll call, Ms. Rose.
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Benfield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey? Yes. Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Frager?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. 3D, motion to approve job descriptions amendments for teachers, coordinators, assistant principals, supervisors, and directors.
Okay, so just so, oh, I'm sorry, you're right.
Your motion.
I'll offer.
Have a motion by Ms. Phelps.
Hold on, Mr. Dr. Eloy,
Yes,
was this your item you put on here?
I did, what did I do wrong?
There's not a motion attached to it, so is it a voting item?
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. It's a motion to approve the addendums to the
Job description.
job descriptions. Sorry, this special call got me out of my routine.
I'll let each
Just
of
one
them.
line.
I just proved to do it today.
Sorry, I didn't
Shows
catch
on the
that.
budget source.
Okay, the motion was
Oh.
Ms. Page?
I think it was Ms. Reba.
Who motioned?
Yes.
Ms. Raven, that's as far as we got. Did we get a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Page.
Okay, so Act 311, what it's saying is from Senator Blake Miguez. I haven't met him, but I wish to soon. What he's asking for here is that teachers be paid based on their job description. And I think we'd all agree with that, that we don't want to nickel and dime teachers for work that's not in their job description. We are not adding any additional work in these job descriptions. We're just being more specific about what some of those things are. If you read over these things, you will not see anything that teachers were not already doing. But at the advice of council, because of the wording of Act 311, if we are not specific about those things, then we can be then liable to pay for them. I don't think any teacher feels as though they should be paid extra for doing an IEP meeting. Those are things that we've been doing for forever. Attending back to school meetings, parent-teacher conferences. But because of the way the language was worded, it was incumbent upon us to be very specific about what those duties entail. We could no longer be generic. But I want to be adamant about the piece that we are not adding anything new. We are simply being more specific about what teachers do. Now, I also didn't want to be unfeeling about the fact that this is a means to get teachers more money, which I hope everyone realizes that I am completely, and I feel this board is completely in favor of. So there's another item that we put on the agenda that kind of references that we, in some areas, we want to expand stipends for teachers for things that they have traditionally, at least in Natchitoches, not been paid for. And that's something we're going to review every year. So we thank Mr. Miguez for enlightening us on that, but this other stuff is to really make sure that we don't have maybe $500,000 new dollars in expenditures next year that we have never had.
Also broken into 3 pieces.
Yes. And so you'll see there's a teacher para, there's a assistant principal, and coordinator, and then there's also supervisors and directors. And this also was taken from Hammonds and Seals. They provided a lot of stuff for us, and then we added a few things that are specific to Natchitoches. Specifically, I'll give you an example. We have a ton of school events at Mardi Gras parades and Christmas festival. Teachers have always done that because they're club sponsors or different things like that. So we added, I think, festivals and parades in there as well.
So what about something like, if you're a FBLA teacher sponsor and you take your kids to state, that's gonna go into the FBLA teacher stipend, correct?
So
It won't be additional.
yes, so and I think actually somewhere in there, I want to say it says field trips, or at least it was in one of the iterations. But we would include in their stipend, that would encompass everything they do. Yeah.
But it's good specific language to cover all
Yes. And I'll be honest with y'all, this is probably going to be a yearly thing that we have to do because there will be some folks who will
Try to take advantage of it.
possibly and look for areas that they've always done the work, but it's not lined out there. And we'll, because this is before July 1, this will affect their entirety of 24-25 school year. Anything after the fact, we will be liable for. And it's not that we want to close loopholes, but we have to run a school district. We can't be adding a whole lot of more expenditures. But at the same time, it's been eye-opening for Lee and I because we are looking at ways we can strategically pay teachers a little bit more in certain areas that they should be.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Have a roll call vote, Ms. Rhodes?
Mr. Danzy?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Frater?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Okay. Item B. Motion to approve updated salary schedule to include club sponsorship stipends.
So what I
I'll
sorry.
Offer of Mr. Danzy, second by Ms. Page.
So
Okay.
what I did is I asked Lee, we were looking at a few areas that we could expand. We decided to only go with one this year and then review the others. But we always have given every school coaching allotments. And you know, they get a number of coaching allotments and they pay those folks their stipends. We're looking to do the same thing with clubs and organizations. You will notice that there is not a number yet. We're still kind of investigating that. We're having talks with principals. Obviously, the largest school, Natchitoches Central, the largest high school, Natchitoches Central, will get the most. And we're going to try to do it as a ratio of how we do the athletic sponsorships. That being said, I will tell you off at face value that we have a whole lot more clubs than we do athletic teams. We are not going to fund every single club. We will fund a certain amount, And then it'll be up to the school to decide which ones require the most work and effort, etc. I can tell you off the top of my head, FBLA, Student Council, National Honor Society, those are probably some of your biggest ones, I'd imagine. If there is a chess club, and I don't want to offend chess aficionados, but is there as much going into that as there is for those others? Again, this will be something we look at every year. So we'll talk to the principal and say, hey, we gave you 15. Did that cause a lot of drama? Oh, not really. We can go down to 12. Or, yeah, it did. We need to go up to 18. So that's what we're thinking here. And then also Lee added the verbiage from Act 311 to the salary schedule, embedded it in there. So those are the only two things that Lee added, correct, Mr. Wilson?
Let me know if there's a principal turns away money.
I don't think they will.
Well, we specifically wrote this district allocated club sponsors. So there's 32 clubs, for instance, at Magna Central. We're going to allocate whatever number we come up with. And it's also going to be revenue neutral. We're going to swap out some of this money with money we supply through school budgets, and we'll be able to.
And Lee, I forgot to mention this to the board as well. One of the designated club sponsorships, because this came up in the past 2 days and I wasn't going to give you another update to a salary schedule. Every school, so say we give each elementary 3, it will really be that they get 4, because there will be one club sponsorship that it'll be called club sponsorship, but it's really their media, social media liaison. We'll clean that up next year and actually put social media liaison as a separate stipend. But for this year, we'll treat it as a club sponsorship just to be able to not have to bring this to you, I think, for the 4th time. So
Where will that money come from?
that's, Mr. Lawson, go ahead.
Yeah, right now we give each school a school budget fund, and in many cases they don't spend all that money. So what we're going to do is just reduce the amount we give them every year by the amount it takes to fund these allocated positions. Like, so if we give 6 positions, let's say to 6 club sponsors paid for a stipend of $600 to, let's say, Lakeview, we will just reduce $600 plus benefits times 6 from what we give Lakeview, for instance. And the same way with all the schools.
So it's
It won't
still
be a major change.
It's
Because
general
this-
fund, but it's general fund that had been allocated for school budgets.
Right,
But
it's
we
already
looked-
budgeted.
But we looked historically and
They're not spending.
they're not spending this money.
Do you know what percentage of that allocated money you may be taking away for this?
I would say,
Like I said, for instance, I think we give Niagara Central like 79,000.
yeah,
This would be maybe 7,000 of that, if that.
no, 8,700 of it. So in that case,
600 times the benefits times the number.
in that case, it would be right at about 10%, maybe a little bit more for Central. Central's gonna be your biggest hit. Everyone else as a ratio is probably gonna be 10% or less, and I would go with the less.
So then one thing to point out is that this used to be a one-pager, used to be just page 1. It was called rules, the name of the page is page 1 of this, rules governing the salary policy. Page 2, 12, items 12 and all the way to 15C. And I would like to point out this right here. This link has been updated and the one I'm going to publish. Mike Kozad. In order to get a copy of this compensation application, which was in the item y'all just approved, we have it on the website, so anybody has access to it. You'll just be able to click on this or type in that number and go straight to it. Pull it up, fill it out, and send it.
So again, principal takes your planning period, you immediately go download that form, you have to get the principal to sign
Get the principal to sign off on
it.
it.
And say, hey, remember what you did? And then they send it to Mr. Harris in payroll, and that's how it goes.
In the past, it hasn't been that way.
This was
Right, because people from other states would call and try to see what they would be making if they came to our district. And it wasn't.
Well, and the reason just so y'all know, the reason we're doing this before July 1, there's several districts who aren't. But we've been told on advice of legal counsel, if we don't address all this before July 1, then we are liable for anything that was not in there by July 1, because that you're putting policy in place after their contract starts. So,
So we're just amending the contract.
yes, ma'am. Well, we're not having to amend the contract, we're amending, you would have to, but there's legal precedent that says you're amending it after it was signed, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? Ms. Reynolds, can you go roll call vote? A yes means you're approving this, a no means you're not.
Mr. Dancy?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Mrs. McGaskey?
Yes.
Ms. Palmer?
Yes.
Ms. Phelps?
Yes.
Ms. Harvey?
Yes.
Mr. Frager?
Yes.
And Ms. Page?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Before we move further into the agenda, which there's only one item left to do, Mr. Pritwire's not here, so we'll be lost. Ms. Pam Pierce said to tell the board thank you for being patient with her in her presentation last, couple weeks ago on poverty, and that to expect a refreshed MOU for the board and 4-H for July. Okay. Mr. Dancy, do you have something that you can add to the board? Like a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion with adjourn.
Second, Mr. President, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.